The alarm clock buzzed at 4:30 a.m., just like it had every morning for the past 8 years. Rosa Williams reached over and turned it off before it could wake her two sleeping children in the next room. The house was quiet, peaceful even, in these early morning hours before the world started demanding things from her. She moved quietly through her small apartment, making coffee and preparing for another day at the Riverside Community Center. Rosa had been working there as a janitor since her youngest daughter was just a baby. Back then, she thought it would be temporary, just something to pay the bills while she figured out her next move. But 8 years later, here she was, and honestly, she didn't mind it anymore. The work was steady, and the pay was enough to keep food on the table and a roof over their heads. More importantly, the early morning hours meant she could be home when her girls got back from school. She could help with homework, cook dinner, and be the mom she wanted to be. Not everyone understood why she chose to clean toilets and mop floors, but Rosa knew what mattered most. As she drove through the empty streets toward the community center, Rosa thought about her day ahead. Tuesday mornings were always busy. The swimming instructors would start arriving around 7, followed by the early morning swim teams. Then came the families with their excited children ready for lessons or just a fun day at the pool. Rosa loved watching those kids. Their laughter echoed through the building, reminding her of her own daughters when they were smaller. Some of the regular families had gotten to know her over the years. They would wave and say good morning, ask about her girls, or compliment how clean everything looked. Those small interactions made the hard work feel worthwhile. She pulled into the employee parking lot and grabbed her keys. The community center was still dark, exactly as she liked it. These quiet moments before the chaos of the day were precious to her. She could work at her own pace, think about things, sometimes even hum her favorite songs while she cleaned. Rosa unlocked the staff entrance and flipped on the lights. The familiar smell of chlorine from the pool area mixed with the clean scent of the disinfectant she used on the floors. She hung up her jacket and put on her work uniform, the same navy blue shirt and pants she had worn thousands of times before. Her routine never changed. First, she would check the pool area and locker rooms. Then she would clean the bathrooms and common areas. Finally, she would mop all the floors and make sure everything was spotless before the first customers arrived. It usually took her about 3 hours to get everything perfect. Walking into the pool area, Rosa immediately noticed something was wrong. The automatic pool cover, which should have been completely closed overnight, was partially open. There was a gap about 6 feet wide where the cover had stopped moving. She frowned and walked closer to investigate. The pool cover was supposed to close automatically every night at 10 p.m. It was a safety feature, designed to prevent accidents when no lifeguards were on duty. Rosa had seen it work perfectly hundreds of times before. She made a mental note to tell the maintenance crew about the problem when they arrived later. The pool water looked calm and clean, reflecting the overhead lights like a mirror. Rosa had always found something peaceful about water. Growing up, her grandmother used to take her to the lake every summer. Those were some of her happiest childhood memories, learning to swim in the warm, muddy water while her grandmother watched from the shore. That's where Rosa learned to swim properly. Not in fancy pools like this one, but in the natural water of Lake Morrison where you couldn't see the bottom and had to trust yourself to stay afloat. Her grandmother insisted all her grandchildren learn to swim. "Water doesn't care what color you are or how much money you have," she used to say. "It'll take you down just the same if you don't respect it." Rosa smiled at the memory as she began setting up her cleaning supplies. She organized her mops, buckets, and bottles of cleaning solution with practiced efficiency. Every tool had its place, every product had its purpose. After 8 years, she could clean this entire building with her eyes closed. She started with the men's locker room, checking each shower stall and cleaning the mirrors until they sparkled. The work was physical, but Rosa had grown strong over the years. Her arms and back were muscled from lifting, scrubbing, and mopping. Her hands, though rough from the cleaning chemicals, were steady and sure. As she worked, Rosa thought about her daughters. Lisa, her oldest at 16, was talking about college lately. She wanted to study nursing, inspired by the time Rosa spent in the hospital after a bad fall 2 years ago. The nurses there had been so kind, so professional. Lisa said she wanted to help people the same way. Her younger daughter, Maya, was 12 and still discovering what she loved. Right now, it was art. She spent hours drawing pictures of everything around her. Rosa's refrigerator was covered with Maya's artwork, colorful drawings that never failed to make her smile after a long day at work. Both girls were good students, better than Rosa had ever been. They did their homework without being asked, helped around the house, and never complained about their situation. Rosa knew they sometimes felt embarrassed about what she did for work. Kids at school could be cruel about things like that. But she also knew they understood why she did it, even if they couldn't always articulate it. Rosa moved on to the women's locker room, humming softly as she cleaned. The building was still quiet, still hers alone for another hour or so. She took her time making sure every surface was perfect. Pride in her work had always been important to her. If something was worth doing, it was worth doing right. The pool deck was next. Rosa carefully mopped around the still water, being extra cautious near the uncovered section. The tiles were slippery when wet, and she had seen too many people take nasty falls over the years. Safety was always on her mind, especially when children were involved. As she worked, Rosa noticed how the morning light was beginning to stream through the high windows of the pool area. Soon the swimmers would arrive, and this peaceful space would come alive with voices and splashing. She would retreat to other parts of the building, letting the trained lifeguards and instructors take over their domain. But for now, in these quiet moments before dawn, the community center belonged to her. And Rosa Williams, the woman who cleaned up after everyone else, took pride in making it perfect for another day. By 7:30 that morning, Rosa had finished cleaning most of the building. She was in the storage room next to the pool area, organizing supplies and checking inventory. The familiar sounds of the community center waking up had begun. Doors opening, voices in the hallway, the echo of footsteps on tile floors. She could hear the Henderson family arriving for their daughter's private swimming lesson. They came every Tuesday and Thursday at the same time. Rosa had seen little Bella Henderson grow from a shy 4-year-old who was afraid of water into a confident 6-year-old who loved to swim. Her parents, Robert and Jennifer Henderson, always seemed rushed but caring. They worked demanding jobs but made time for their daughter's activities. Rosa was counting bottles of pool chemicals when she heard Jennifer Henderson's voice carrying across the pool deck. "Bella, wait for us! Don't run on the wet floor." But Rosa could already hear the quick patter of small feet moving faster than they should near water. Children never listened when they were excited. Rosa had learned this from watching hundreds of kids at the community center over the years. They would see the pool and forget everything else. Their parents' warnings, safety rules, even their own fear, sometimes disappeared when they saw that blue water waiting for them. Rosa was reaching for a clipboard. When she heard the splash, it wasn't the controlled splash of someone jumping into a pool. It wasn't the playful splash of a child who knew how to swim. It was the panicked, chaotic splash of someone falling into water unexpectedly. Rosa had heard that sound before, and it always meant trouble. She dropped the clipboard and rushed out of the storage room. What she saw made her heart stop. Little Bella Henderson was in the water, in the part of the pool where the safety cover had malfunctioned. The child was flailing, trying to grab onto something, anything, but there was nothing to hold on to. The pool cover was too far away, and the pool deck was too high above the water. Bella's head went under. Rosa could see her small form beneath the surface, struggling to get back up. Where were her parents? Where was the swimming instructor? Rosa looked around quickly and realized that no one else had seen what happened. Bella had run ahead of her family, and the instructor wasn't scheduled to arrive for another few minutes. Rosa didn't think. She couldn't think. There wasn't time for thinking. She kicked off her work shoes and dove into the pool, uniform and all. The water was shockingly cold against her skin, but Rosa barely noticed. She had one focus, one purpose: get to Bella before it was too late. The child had gone under for the second time when Rosa reached her. Rosa dove down, her eyes open in the chlorinated water, searching frantically. She saw Bella about 4 feet down, her small arms still moving weakly. Rosa grabbed her around the waist and kicked hard toward the surface. They broke through together, Bella coughing and gasping. Rosa held the child against her chest with one arm, while she swam toward the pool's edge with the other. "I've got you, baby," Rosa whispered. "You're okay now. I've got you." Bella was crying and coughing up pool water, but she was breathing. That was all that mattered. Rosa reached the pool's edge and lifted the child up onto the deck, then pulled herself up after her. Her work clothes were completely soaked, and water was dripping everywhere. But Rosa didn't care about any of that. She knelt beside Bella, who was sitting on the pool deck, shaking and crying. Are you hurt anywhere? Rosa asked gently. Does anything hurt? Bella shook her head, still crying but trying to catch her breath. Rosa rubbed the child's back, the way she had done for her own daughters countless times when they were scared or hurt. Bella! The panicked scream came from Jennifer Henderson as she and her husband rushed onto the pool deck. They had been in the lobby, signing paperwork and talking to the front desk staff when they realized Bella had disappeared. Jennifer dropped to her knees beside her daughter, pulling her into a fierce hug. Oh my God, what happened? Are you okay? Robert Henderson stood behind them, his face pale with shock as he took in the scene. His daughter was soaking wet, sitting next to a woman in a dripping janitor's uniform. She fell in, Rosa said simply, wringing water out of her shirt. The pool cover isn't working right. There's a gap. She slipped and went under. Jennifer looked at Rosa with wide eyes, suddenly understanding what had happened. You pulled her out? You saved her? Rosa nodded, feeling suddenly self-conscious about her appearance. Her hair was plastered to her head, and her uniform was making puddles on the clean floor she had mopped just hours earlier. I heard the splash, Rosa explained. I was in the storage room. When I saw her in the water, I had to get her out. Robert Henderson was looking around, trying to piece together the timeline of events. Where was everyone else? Where's the lifeguard? The instructor doesn't start until 8, Rosa said. And the lifeguards don't come on duty until the pool opens for public swimming. That's not until 9. The reality of the situation was sinking in for both parents. Their daughter could have drowned. She would have drowned if not for Rosa Williams, the janitor who happened to be nearby when catastrophe struck. Thank you, Jennifer said, her voice breaking. Thank you so much. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't been there. Rosa looked down at Bella, who had stopped crying and was now just shivering from the cold and the shock. She's okay, Rosa said. That's what matters. But someone should look at that pool cover. It's not safe like this. By this time, other staff members were starting to arrive. Tom Bradley, the head swimming instructor, came rushing in after hearing voices from the pool area. Behind him was David Walsh, the community center manager, looking annoyed at being disturbed so early in the morning. What's going on here? Walsh demanded, taking in the scene. Why is everyone wet? Rosa, why aren't you in uniform? He seemed more concerned about protocol than about what had actually happened. Robert Henderson stood up, his protective instincts kicking in. This woman just saved my daughter's life, he said firmly. Bella fell into the pool because the safety cover isn't working properly. If Rosa hadn't been here, if she hadn't acted so quickly. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Walsh looked uncomfortable, as if he wasn't sure how to process this information. Well, we should call paramedics to check the child, he said finally. And we need to figure out what went wrong with the pool cover. Tom Bradley was already on his phone, calling 911 to request a medical check for Bella. Jennifer Henderson was wrapping her daughter in towels that Rosa had fetched from the supply closet. The child was warming up and seemed physically fine, but everyone agreed that a medical professional should examine her. As they waited for the paramedics to arrive, Rosa stood quietly to the side, water still dripping from her clothes. She was thinking about how quickly everything had changed. One moment she was doing inventory, and the next she was pulling a drowning child from a pool. Life could turn on a dime like that. She had learned that lesson many times over the years. Jennifer Henderson approached her again. I don't think I properly thanked you, she said. What you did? Jumping in without hesitation. You're a hero. Rosa felt uncomfortable with that word. Heroes were people in movies, people who did extraordinary things. She was just a mother, a woman who cleaned buildings for a living. But when she had seen that child in trouble, there hadn't been any choice to make. Any parent, any decent person would have done the same thing. I'm just glad she's okay, Rosa said quietly. That's all that matters. The paramedics arrived within 10 minutes, their sirens cutting through the morning quiet of the community center. Rosa watched from a distance as they checked Bella over, listening to her heart and lungs, asking simple questions to make sure she was alert and responsive. The little girl answered clearly, even managing a small smile when one of the paramedics told her she was very brave. She's perfectly fine, the lead paramedic told Jennifer and Robert Henderson. No water in her lungs, all vital signs normal. She might be a little shaky for a while from the scare, but physically she's completely okay. Rosa felt a wave of relief wash over her. She had been confident that Bella was fine, but hearing it from a medical professional made it official. The child was safe. That was all that mattered. As the paramedics packed up their equipment, David Walsh pulled Rosa aside. She expected him to thank her, maybe even praise her quick thinking. Instead, his expression was serious, almost stern. "Rosa, we need to talk about what happened here," Walsh said, keeping his voice low. "How exactly did the child end up in the water? You were supposed to be cleaning, not supervising the pool area." Rosa felt confused by his tone. "I was in the storage room doing inventory like I always do. The pool cover malfunctioned overnight. There was a gap in the cover that shouldn't have been there. The little girl ran ahead of her parents and slipped on the wet deck." Walsh frowned, making notes on a clipboard he had brought with him. "But you were responsible for checking the pool area this morning, correct? Part of your routine?" "Yes, I checked it," Rosa said, feeling defensive. "I noticed the cover wasn't working right, and I was going to report it to maintenance when they got here. I had no way to fix it myself." "But you didn't put up any warning signs? You didn't block access to the dangerous area?" Rosa stared at him. "David, the family wasn't supposed to arrive until 8. The pool doesn't open for lessons until then. I was planning to handle it through proper channels before anyone came near the water." Walsh scribbled more notes, his frown deepening. Rosa couldn't understand what he was getting at. She had saved a child's life. Why was he questioning her actions instead of praising them? Robert Henderson had been listening to their conversation, and he stepped closer. "Excuse me," he said to Walsh. "Are you seriously questioning this woman right now? She's a hero. She saved my daughter's life." "I appreciate that," Walsh replied stiffly. "But I have to look at this from a liability standpoint. There are protocols in place for situations like this." "Protocols?" Jennifer Henderson joined the conversation, her voice rising. "What protocol would have saved Bella's life when she was drowning?" Rosa acted immediately. She didn't hesitate for a second. Rosa felt increasingly uncomfortable as the adults argued around her. She didn't want to be the center of attention. She just wanted to change into dry clothes and get back to work. Her uniform was still damp and cold against her skin, and she was starting to shiver. "I should get back to my duties," Rosa said quietly, trying to step away from the group. "Actually, Rosa, I need you to come to my office first," Walsh said. "We need to file a complete incident report about what happened here today." Rosa nodded, assuming this was standard procedure. She had never been involved in an emergency before, but it made sense that there would be paperwork to complete. She followed Walsh toward the administrative offices, leaving the Henderson family to gather their things and take Bella home. Walsh's office was small and cramped, with filing cabinets along every wall and a desk covered in paperwork. He gestured for Rosa to sit in the chair across from his desk while he pulled out a thick folder labeled Incident Reports. "Let's start from the beginning," Walsh said, clicking his pen. "What time did you arrive at work this morning?" Rosa answered all his questions patiently. What time she arrived, what her normal routine included, when she first noticed the pool cover problem, how long she had been in the storage room before hearing the splash. Walsh wrote down every detail, occasionally asking her to repeat something or clarify a timeline. "And you dove into the pool in your work clothes?" Walsh asked, as if this were somehow suspicious. "There wasn't time to change," Rosa said, wondering why this even mattered. "The child was drowning. I had to act immediately." Walsh made more notes. "Do you have any formal lifeguard training? Water rescue certification?" "No, but I'm a strong swimmer. I learned as a child and I've never forgotten. When I saw Bella in trouble, I knew I could help her. But without proper training, you could have made the situation worse. You could have drowned yourself, creating a second victim." Rosa felt a flash of anger. "But I didn't make it worse. I saved her life. She's fine and I'm fine. What more do you want?" Walsh didn't answer directly. Instead, he continued with his questions, asking about her knowledge of pool safety protocols, whether she had authorization to be in the pool area during her shift, and why she hadn't immediately called for help instead of jumping in herself. "There wasn't anyone to call," Rosa said, her patience wearing thin. "The lifeguards weren't here yet. The swimming instructors weren't here yet. It was just me and a little girl who was drowning. I did what any decent person would do." "That's the problem," Walsh said, setting down his pen. "You're not authorized to perform water rescues. That's outside your job description. By jumping into the pool, you exceeded your authority and potentially exposed the community center to liability issues." Rosa couldn't believe what she was hearing. Liability issues? A child could have died. And if you had drowned trying to save her, we would have had 2 tragedies on our hands. Plus, the family could sue us for having an untrained employee attempt a dangerous rescue. Rosa sat in stunned silence. She had expected to be thanked, maybe even commended for her actions. Instead, she was being criticized for exceeding her authority. She was being made to feel as if she had done something wrong by saving a child's life. Walsh pulled out another form and began filling it out. I'm going to recommend that you attend additional safety training before returning to work around the pool area. We need to make sure you understand the proper protocols for emergency situations. David, Rosa said slowly, are you punishing me for saving that little girl? I'm not punishing anyone, Walsh replied. I'm following company policy to make sure something like this doesn't happen again. The pool cover malfunction was a mechanical failure, but your response to the situation was not appropriate for your position. Rosa felt tears stinging her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She had worked at this community center for 8 years without a single complaint. She had always been professional, reliable, and hardworking. And now, on the day she had done the most important thing she had ever done at work, she was being treated like a problem employee. Can I go now? Rosa asked quietly. I need to change clothes and finish my duties. Walsh nodded, handing her a copy of the incident report. Read through this and sign it. Bring it back to me before you leave today. And Rosa, let's keep this situation between us for now. No need to discuss it with other employees or create unnecessary drama. Rosa took the papers and left Walsh's office feeling more confused than ever. In the hallway, she ran into Tom Bradley, the swimming instructor, who had been waiting to speak with Walsh about the pool cover repair. Rosa, Tom said warmly, I heard what happened. You're a real hero. That little girl is lucky you were there. For the first time that morning, Rosa felt like someone understood the significance of what had occurred. Tom Bradley had been working at the community center for 15 years. He had seen plenty of close calls and accidents over the years. Thank you, Rosa said softly. I just did what anyone would do. No, Tom replied firmly. Not everyone would have reacted so quickly. Not everyone would have jumped in without thinking about their own safety. You saved that child's life, Rosa. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. As Tom went into Walsh's office for his meeting, Rosa walked slowly toward the employee locker room to change out of her damp clothes. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong with how this situation was being handled, but she also couldn't quite put her finger on what that something was. All she knew was that she had started the day feeling proud of her work and her life. Now she felt uncertain about both. Rosa changed into her spare uniform and tried to focus on finishing her morning duties. But she couldn't concentrate properly. Every few minutes her mind would drift back to David Walsh's questions and his strange attitude about what had happened. She kept replaying his words in her head, trying to understand why saving a child's life was being treated like a problem. She was mopping the lobby floor when Walsh appeared again, this time with 2 other people she didn't recognize. One was a woman in an expensive business suit carrying a briefcase. The other was a man with a security badge who worked for the company that managed the community center. Rosa, I need you to come with us, Walsh said, his tone formal and cold. I'm not finished with the lobby yet, Rosa replied. Confused by the interruption, leave it. Someone else will finish your duties today. Rosa felt a chill run down her spine. Something was very wrong. She followed the 3 of them back toward Walsh's office, her wet mop squeaking against the floor as she pushed the bucket along. Other employees were starting to arrive for their shifts, and she could feel them watching the unusual procession. In Walsh's office, the woman in the suit introduced herself as Rebecca Martinez, a representative from the company's legal department. The security guard, whose name tag read Phillips, stood by the door as if he expected Rosa to try to run away. Ms. Williams, Martinez said, opening her briefcase and pulling out a folder. We've been reviewing the incident that occurred this morning, and we've made a decision about your employment status. Rosa's heart began to race. My employment status? What do you mean? Due to the serious safety violation that occurred under your watch, and your failure to follow proper emergency protocols, we are terminating your employment effective immediately. The words hit Rosa like a physical blow. She gripped the arms of her chair to steady herself. You're firing me? For saving a child's life? You're being terminated for exceeding your job authority and creating a liability risk for the company, Martinez said in a voice that sounded like she had delivered this speech many times before. The mechanical failure of the pool cover was not your fault, but your response to the situation was inappropriate and potentially dangerous. Rosa couldn't believe what she was hearing. Potentially dangerous? I saved that little girl. She could have died if I hadn't acted. That's not your determination to make, Walsh interjected. You're not trained in water rescue. You should have called for help and waited for qualified personnel to respond. There was no qualified personnel, Rosa said, her voice rising. There was nobody else there. That child would have drowned while I was making phone calls. Martinez pulled out a piece of paper and slid it across the desk. This is your termination notice. It outlines the reasons for your dismissal and explains your final paycheck and benefits information. Rosa stared at the document, trying to make sense of the words swimming before her eyes. After 8 years of dedicated service, after saving a child's life just hours earlier, she was being fired like a common criminal. I don't understand, Rosa said, her voice barely above a whisper. I've worked here for 8 years. I've never had any problems, never had any complaints. And now on the day I do the most important thing I've ever done at work, you're firing me? Your previous performance isn't relevant to this decision, Martinez said coldly. This is about the serious safety violation that occurred today. Phillips, the security guard, stepped forward. Ma'am, I need you to collect your personal belongings from your locker and leave the premises immediately. You're no longer authorized to be in this building. Rosa felt like she was living in a nightmare. Everything was happening too fast, nothing made sense. Can I at least call someone? My daughters? They need to know what happened. You can make calls from outside the building, Phillips said. Right now I need you to gather your things so I can escort you out. The walk to the employee locker room felt like the longest walk of Rosa's life. Other staff members stared as she passed, clearly sensing that something serious was happening but not understanding what. Rosa kept her head down, trying to maintain some dignity as her world fell apart around her. At her locker, she gathered the few personal items she kept at work. A small photo of her daughters, an extra sweater, some snacks she kept for breaks. It seemed impossible that 8 years of her life could be reduced to a few items that fit in a plastic bag. As she closed her locker for the last time, Tom Bradley appeared in the doorway of the locker room. He looked shocked and confused. Rosa, what's going on? I just heard you were being let go. That can't be right. Philip stepped between them before Rosa could answer. Sir, I need you to step back. Ms. Williams is no longer an employee here. This is insane, Tom said, looking back and forth between Rosa and the security guard. She's a hero. She saved a child's life this morning. How can you possibly be firing her? That's not your concern, Phillips replied firmly. Please return to your duties. Tom looked at Rosa with sympathy and confusion. Rosa, I'm so sorry. This is wrong. Everyone knows this is wrong. Rosa managed a weak smile. Take care of yourself, Tom, and keep an eye on that pool cover until it gets fixed properly. The walk through the building toward the exit was a blur of shame and disbelief. Rosa had entered the community center that morning as a respected employee. Now she was being escorted out like a criminal, carrying her possessions in a plastic bag. In the parking lot, Phillips watched as Rosa got into her car. Ma'am, you're not allowed to return to this property for any reason. If you do, it will be considered trespassing. Rosa nodded numbly and started her car. As she drove away from the community center, she caught a glimpse of herself in the rearview mirror. Her eyes were red with unshed tears, her face pale with shock. She looked like someone who had just lost everything important to her, because in a way she had. The drive home was automatic. Rosa's hands steered the car while her mind tried to process what had just happened. How would she tell her daughters? How would she pay the bills? How would she explain to anyone that she had been fired for saving a child's life? When she pulled into her apartment complex, she sat in the car for several minutes before getting out. Her neighbors would be at work or at school. The complex was quiet, peaceful. No one here knew yet that her life had just been turned upside down. Rosa climbed the stairs to her second-floor apartment and let herself in. The silence felt different now. This morning, the quiet had been comforting, a refuge from the busy world outside. Now it felt empty and frightening. She sat on her couch and finally allowed herself to cry, deep, painful sobs that came from somewhere in her chest. She cried for the injustice of what had happened, for the fear of what would come next, and for the feeling that doing the right thing had somehow made her life completely wrong. After a while, The tears stopped, but the questions remained. How had saving a child's life become grounds for termination? How could 8 years of good work be wiped away in a single morning? And most importantly, how was she going to survive this? Rosa looked at the termination notice that was still crumpled in her hand. At the bottom, in small print, it mentioned her right to appeal the decision through the company's Human Resources Department. She smoothed out the paper and read that section again. Maybe there was still hope. Maybe someone higher up in the company would see how wrong this was and reverse the decision. Maybe justice would still prevail. But deep down, Rosa had a sinking feeling that the fight ahead of her would be much harder than jumping into a pool to save a drowning child. Rosa spent the rest of that Tuesday in a daze, alternating between anger and disbelief. When her daughters came home from school that afternoon, she had to tell them what happened. Lisa, her 16-year-old, was furious. Maya, only 12, cried and asked if they would have to move. "We're going to be okay," Rosa told them, though she wasn't sure she believed it herself. "I'll find another job. This is just a setback." But as the days passed, Rosa began to realize how difficult it would be to explain her termination to potential employers. How do you tell someone in a job interview that you were fired for saving a child's life? It sounded crazy even to her own ears. By Thursday morning, Rosa was sitting at her kitchen table with a cup of coffee and a newspaper, looking through the classified ads, when her phone rang. It was Jennifer Henderson. "Rosa, I hope you don't mind that I got your number from the community center's emergency contact list," Jennifer said. "I wanted to check on you and thank you again for what you did." "I'm fine," Rosa said quietly. "How is Bella doing?" "She's wonderful," back to her normal, energetic self. "But Rosa, I heard something yesterday that I can't stop thinking about. Someone told me that you were let go from your job. Please tell me that's not true." Rosa closed her eyes. She hadn't wanted the Henderson family to know about her termination. They had enough to deal with processing their daughter's close call. "It's true," she said finally. There was a long silence on the other end of the phone. When Jennifer spoke again, her voice was tight with anger. "They fired you? For saving my daughter's life? According to them, I exceeded my authority and created liability issues," Rosa explained. "That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard," Jennifer said. "Robert and I are coming over. We need to talk about this. Mrs. Henderson, you don't need to get involved in my problems. Rosa, you saved my daughter's life. Your problems are our problems now." An hour later, Jennifer and Robert Henderson were sitting in Rosa's small living room, listening as she explained everything that had happened since Tuesday morning. Robert, who worked as a lawyer, was taking notes and asking detailed questions about her termination meeting. "This is outrageous," Robert said when Rosa finished her story. "They fired you for performing a rescue that prevented a wrongful death lawsuit. Any decent lawyer could see how backwards this is." "But what can I do about it?" Rosa asked. "I don't have money for a lawyer. I don't have connections or influence. I'm just a janitor who got fired." "You're not just anything," Jennifer said firmly. "You're the woman who saved our daughter, and we're not going to let them get away with this." Over the next few days, the Henderson family began making calls. Robert contacted other parents who used the community center regularly, explaining what had happened and asking them to support Rosa. Jennifer reached out to local media outlets, trying to get someone to cover the story. At first, nothing seemed to happen. Rosa continued looking for work while trying to manage her growing anxiety about bills and rent. Then on the following Tuesday, exactly 1 week after the incident, everything changed. Tom Bradley called Rosa early in the morning. "Turn on Channel 7 News," he said urgently. "Right now." Rosa found the remote and switched to the local news station. A reporter was standing outside the Riverside Community Center, speaking into a microphone. "This is the community center where last week, a janitor was fired after saving a 6-year-old girl from drowning," the reporter said. "The family of the rescued child is speaking out, saying that Rosa Williams is a hero who deserves recognition, not termination." The camera cut to an interview with Robert and Jennifer Henderson, sitting in their living room with Bella between them. Jennifer was speaking passionately about Rosa's quick actions and selfless bravery. Robert was explaining how the termination made no legal or moral sense. "This woman risked her own life to save our daughter," Jennifer said, looking directly into the camera. "She didn't hesitate for a second. She just acted out of pure human decency. And for that, she was treated like a criminal. It's wrong and it needs to be made right." Rosa watched in amazement as the story continued. The reporter had interviewed other community center employees, including Tom Bradley, who confirmed that Rosa was well-liked and had always been professional. They had also spoken with parents who used the facility, many of whom expressed outrage at Rosa's treatment. By noon, Rosa's phone was ringing constantly. Other news stations wanted to interview her. Neighbors were stopping by to offer support and encouragement. Her story was spreading across social media, with hundreds of people sharing posts about the injustice she had faced. The attention was overwhelming, but it was also empowering. For the first time since her termination, Rosa felt like people understood what had really happened. She wasn't crazy for thinking the whole situation was wrong. Other people could see it too. On Wednesday morning, Rosa received a call from a woman named Patricia Cole, who introduced herself as the regional director for the company that managed the community center. "Ms. Williams, I've been following the media coverage of your situation," Cole said. "I want you to know that I've launched a full investigation into your termination." "What does that mean?" Rosa asked. "It means I'm reviewing all the documentation, interviewing the people involved, and determining whether the correct procedures were followed. I should have preliminary findings by the end of the week." Rosa felt a spark of hope for the first time in over a week. Maybe someone in authority would finally see how wrong this was. On Friday afternoon, Cole called back. "Ms. Williams, I've completed my review, and I want to offer you reinstatement to your position effective immediately. You'll receive full back pay for the time you've been off work, and a formal letter of commendation will be placed in your personnel file." Rosa had to sit down as she processed the news. What about David Walsh? What about all the liability concerns he mentioned? "Mr. Walsh has been reassigned to a different facility," Cole said diplomatically. "As for liability concerns, our legal department has determined that your actions were heroic and appropriate given the circumstances. The community center is proud to have an employee with your courage and quick thinking." The following Monday, Rosa returned to the Riverside Community Center to a hero's welcome. Staff members applauded as she walked through the building. Parents stopped her to shake hands and thank her. Tom Bradley had organized a small celebration in the break room, complete with a cake that read, "Welcome back, hero." But the most meaningful moment came when the Henderson family arrived for Bella's swimming lesson. The little girl ran straight to Rosa and hugged her legs tightly. "Thank you for saving me," Bella said in her clear 6-year-old voice. Rosa knelt down to Bella's level and smiled. "You're very welcome, sweetie. That's what friends do for each other." Jennifer Henderson pulled Rosa aside as Bella went to get ready for her lesson. "We've set up a scholarship fund," she said. "Swimming lessons for children whose families can't afford them. We're calling it the Rosa Williams Hero Fund." Rosa felt tears in her eyes, but this time they were tears of gratitude rather than pain. "You didn't have to do that." "Yes, we did," Jennifer replied. "Heroes should be celebrated, not punished. And we want to make sure that other children get the chance to learn water safety so they can be as brave and capable as you are." As Rosa went back to her duties that morning, she reflected on everything that had happened over the past 2 weeks. She had learned that doing the right thing doesn't always lead to immediate rewards. Sometimes it leads to punishment and injustice. But she had also learned that truth has a way of emerging, especially when good people are willing to stand up and fight for it. The community center felt different now, but in a good way. Rosa was no longer just the janitor who cleaned the building before everyone else arrived. She was Rosa Williams, the woman who had saved a child's life and fought back against injustice. And as she organized her cleaning supplies and prepared to make the building spotless for another day of families and children, Rosa knew that she would never again doubt the importance of her work or the value of doing what's right. Regardless of the consequences, the pool cover had been repaired properly this time. But more importantly, something else had been repaired too: faith in justice, belief in human decency, and the understanding that heroes come in all forms, even those wearing janitor's uniforms. Rosa Williams had always been a hero to her daughters. Now she was a hero to her entire community, and that, she thought as she began her morning routine, was worth everything she had been through.